Hello, everyone. Welcome to Profiling Evil by Mike King with Chris McDonough. It's so great to have you all join us tonight. Chris, how you doing tonight, brother?
Mike, I'm doing great. It's so great to see you. And boy, is this an exciting night or what? This is going to be great.
This is, and you know, I just want to take a second and personally congratulate you on some things that have happened in your life that have been really great. And in normal fashion, I'm leaving everyone hanging to what that is, but so happy for you and your family. It's just great. We want to invite everyone to please take a little time. The numbers are starting to roll in already, but take a little time tonight and make sure you're hitting that subscribe button and you're ringing that bell. And if you're looking for any kind of information on our speakers tonight, on the content tonight, or how to get a hold of things like merchandise or to reach us, just look below. All of the information is listed below. We are so appreciative of all the guys in the back office. And and above all, we're really thankful for you. Chris, real quickly, anybody on the list you want to yell a shout out to, or
yeah, sure. Let's see who we got here tonight. So we've got Stephanie Lee, Suzanne, Warner, Robbie S. Great to have you guys here. Glowing Amber, Sophie H. Good seeing you. Lisa Marie, I Walker 1963. Hello. Alicia Wright. Hi. How are you? Unicorn Heart. Hi, Mike. Hi, Chris. Good to see you. And we're waiting for a couple more folks to come in here tonight. And let me tell you, this is going to be an amazing program. Absolutely amazing program. Let's see here. Kathy Drush. Shout out to Fusus and Chris and the crew over there. What do we've got here?
It is really nice to meet Fusus. Thank you so much.
It's good to see you guys. Nicole Marie, Penny Sue. We've got so many great friends here, Mike. Kimberly Alexander, Carol, Rebel, Jackie M, Sherry. Boy, there's just so much.
It's great.
Yep.
And folks, we always are appreciative of those who have looked at our memberships and those of you that are interested in the super chatting, but I don't think I can stand it anymore. Let's bring in Charlie and Don real quickly. Folks, I want to introduce you to two people who you are just going to fall in love with. Now, in the sweater and the nice shirt is my longtime friend, Don DeNevi, who has authored more books than I can count. This amazing man, Dr. Don DeNevi, was a professor in a university, went on to work after retirement at San Quentin Prison, and that's where we really became friends. What a strange thing to think of, Don. And since retiring from San Quentin and the California correctional system, he has been working his tail off, continuing to write. And Don, I want to come back to you in just a minute, but if you just raise your hand, make sure they know which one is Don DeNevi. And then our favorite guest tonight that we are so excited about that he would take time is to just introduce you to Mr. Charlie Hopkins, who is the last survivor of Alcatraz prison. And Charlie, thank you so much to you and Lisa and your family for making your time available to be with us. Let's just start out for just a minute, Chris, and have Charlie give us a quick idea of who he is. Should we do that?
Absolutely.
Charlie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up during the Great Depression, and times was really hard back then. It made me tough, but when I went to the Rock, I left there tougher than I was when I got there. It made me harder, and it was when I first got there, they didn't have a radio. So the only thing you had to do was read a book or talk to your next door neighbor. You sell, a guy selling by you. And you had you went to work probably 3 hours in the morning, then another 3 hours in the evening. And then you came back, you went to your cell, Then you went from your cell to the mess hall and ate. Then you went back to your cell and you stayed there until the next morning when you got up for breakfast. And it was the same thing every day. Once they put the radio in, that made a big difference. You know, we'd listen to music, listen to the news, and know what's going on. Before that, you didn't know what was going on outside. You get Time magazine, the only magazines you could look at. You know, they act like you was a child. You couldn't, no crime was allowed. You had Time magazine, Look magazine, Life magazine, Field and Stream, Boxing magazine, and that was it. And the library, the books, was mostly technical books and a few old Western paperbacks. But in 1956, they got in a bunch of crime books, paperbacks, some good ones. And that made a big difference.
That is really something, Charlie. Don, how did you and Charlie meet?
I had written Alcatraz 46, The Anatomy of a Classic Prison Tragedy. And I followed that up with Riddle of the Rock, the only successful escape from Alcatraz. And Charlie, I think that we made contact around 1992 or 1993.
No, 89.
It was 1989. And
yeah,
Charlie,
Joe Carnes died in October 88. And in early 89, they did what was it? Unsolved Mysteries?
yes.
Well, I think that's what it was. They did an Alcatraz show, and Joe Carnes was supposed to be in that show. And they said that they had sad news that he had died just a couple of months before. And they showed you in there talking about him. And you was at Merritt College then. And I wrote you a letter and told you that Joe was my best friend. Yeah. And I asked you if you knew what happened to Simcoe. Yeah. And you said you didn't know anything about Simcoe. Yeah. And that's when we started corresponding.
Yeah.
February of 89.
Right. And I think I have that letter somewhere, Charlie. You know, I have every single letter that you ever wrote to me. And we're talking well over 1,000. Charlie and I have known each other since that time. And I thought, my goodness, if there's any contradiction to the title of Profiling Evil, it's with Charlie Hopkins, because Charlie Hopkins never hurt anybody. Got into a lot of crime, did a kidnapping of a whole bus of people and all of that, sure. But I can't imagine Charlie ever raising his fist on anyone. In any case, the warmth of his letters told me I had a friend. And we've been corresponding and calling each other since then. And maybe it was in 1991 or 92, we began thinking about your story. And I loved your concept because I think you titled it Hard Time. And I added Life of an Incorrigible on Alcatraz, because you had been an incorrigible all through the youth authorities, schools and jails, and then Atlanta and Leavenworth and so forth. And at Alcatraz, they were warned you were coming. But I never saw one part of that in those 30 years. And I can't tell you how much affection and how much feeling I have for him. And in fact, to this moment, Charlie, and I may have mentioned this once or twice in those 30 years, but the highest compliment I ever got was from you when you casually mentioned one time, Don, you're a stand-up guy. And those words to me meant everything. So Charlie and I are still corresponding. We talked yesterday morning, and I was able to convince my publisher, Dan Edwards, Creative Text, to take a look at Hard Time, Life of an Incorrigible on Alcatraz, because it had been sitting on the shelf since 1992, and I couldn't find a publisher for it. And I'll let Charlie explain why. Charlie knows that there were a number of autobiographies, biographies, recollections, memoirs from inmates at Alcatraz. And most of them were baloney. Most of them were written by men who loved to boast that they had survived the unsurvivable. And Charlie would read them and would comment how ridiculous they were. So, Charlie, why don't you go ahead and take over and explain the slew of memoirs from Alcatraz that virtually all, except with an exception or two, wasn't telling the truth or was fabricating or was self-aggrandizing, all of that to promote themselves. To me, there were two worlds on Alcatraz. You had, because most of the sentences on Alcatraz, there were only about 1,550, Charlie, inmates ever on Alcatraz, 1,600. And most of those men were there for between 2 and 3 years. So you had that element who could boast, I was on Alcatraz and I survived. Look at me. And then you had an underworld. And it was a harsh, very cruel, very violent underworld. In fact, in 1957, there were so many killings on Alcatraz, and by that I mean no more than maybe 6 or 8 or 10, but unusual for that low a population in one institution. But it made the congressional record in Congress that there were too many killings going on at Alcatraz.
So, Don, I have a question real fast. So, Charlie, real quick. So we have a lot of folks here asking how young you are. What year were you born?
1932.
1932. Okay. And then, to Don's point there, tell us a little bit about how, when you first got what it's called, the Rock, right? I mean, you're originally when you got there.
Yeah, everybody calls it the Rock. Yeah, okay. That's the nickname for it, because that's all it is, a solid rock.
Right. Mike Roy Gardner, California's nicest bad man, used to rob trains with a bullet in his pistol that was made of wood so he wouldn't hurt anybody. But anyway, he was on Alcatraz in the early years, 33, 34, when it first opened. He wrote a little paperback entitled Alcatraz, The Rock of Despair. And I'm not sure if Alcatraz earned that name Rock before, but it appeared in print. Alcatraz, The Rock of Despair by Roy Gardner. And
so all the ladies out here, Charlie, think you look like Matt Dillon.
Damon.
Dalen. Who is it? Yeah.
Damon.
There you go. So tell us.
When I went, Prometheus book paid my way to Alcatraz back in September 1990 to promote their book, and the professional photographer that dined hard to go, follow us around and take pictures. He had a good-looking wife, 32 years old, and she kept talking about how good-looking I was, and she walked with me. and had her husband take a picture of me and her together. And
everybody likes the bad boy.
She said I look like Tom Cruise.
Wow.
So tell us about that, Charlie. Tell us about life on there. I mean, here's a couple of facts. Alcatraz, if for folks, we have people all around the world that are watching tonight, Charlie. For those of you, Alcatraz is on a little island about 1.25 miles, so about 2 kilometers out into San Francisco Bay. It's just a small little island. It was originally built as a lighthouse, and I think it was also a military fortress, wasn't it, Don?
Yes, it was. Civil War times.
Yeah, and then it became a military prison, and then it later became a federal penitentiary, and it remained as a federal penitentiary until March of 1963. But this is something I found interesting that I want you to respond to, Charlie. It was designed to house prisoners who were continuously causing trouble at other federal prisons. And most of the prisoners there were notorious bank robbers and murderers. And that was people like Al Capone and Robert Franklin Shroud and George Machine Gun Kelly. Tell us about how long you lived on the Rock and what that was like day to day.
I went there in 1955, and when I got there, I told you how it was. You didn't have hardly anything to do. Now, starting in I think 1960, they started changing the place. They not only put in weights, lifting weights, they put in some kind of shuffleboard out on the yard. When I was there, the only sports we had was handball and softball. That was it. And they made a lot of changes where they could have never made that escape when I was there. Security was so tight you couldn't breathe when I was there. That all come about with the new warden and the new attorney general. Robert Kennedy, he was a bleeding heart, and he was in charge of all federal prisons. They come under the attorney general, and everything has to be that you changes has to be go through the attorney general. The warden can suggest it, but the attorney general is the boss. And it changed 100% after I left there. I left there in 58, and there's no way they could have done that escape in 58. Right. See, they came there in 1961, so they hadn't been there no time when they made the escape. And things like the vent they went through on the roof, they gave Alan West credit for that. Red Winoven is the one that discovered that. He discovered that back in 56. He was like a handyman. He did electrical work, plumbing work, and all of that. And that's how he discovered that vent. And Alan West was there in 56. So he knew about it. And all he did was pass it on. He didn't discover it. And I don't understand why he was on top of C Block doing all that sweeping. There was nothing up there. It was empty. Why was he up there? I'd like to ask the warden why he had Alan West up on top of C Block. Why? Why was he up there? There was no reason for it.
Hey, Charlie, take a look at these photographs. Tell us what this photo reminds you of.
That looks like the serving line. Let's see. It looked like the serving line in the mess hall.
Yeah, tell us about that experience. How often? I mean, we know how often, 3 times a day. But tell us what that was like, and what kind of problems, if fights broke out, or what it was like up there at that time.
Yeah, that's the dining room. When I was there, you had 8-man tables, a wooden table with 4 guys on each side, and a bench, a big wooden bench on each side. And like I told you, it changed so much, that they really didn't need it anymore. The type of guys that they were sending there, they didn't need anymore. And they put tables in there restaurant style, like going in a restaurant to eat. When I was there, you filed in and you filed in order. And they would show you which table to go to. And you sat at that table. And when you got through eating, you passed your silverware to the end of that table. And the guard would count it all, and it better be there. And then they would start one table at a time as you go out and back to your cells. Yeah, you can see the old tables there. That's the way it was when I was there. Had the old wooden tables. 4 guys on each, one side and 4 on the other side.
And what block were you on, Charlie? What cell block were you in?
Well, I started out when I first got there. You automatically go on Broadway, which is part of C block. The blacks is on one side of C block, and the other side was for kitchen workers and new recruits. When you first get there, you'd stay there maybe 10 days, 2 weeks, and they would assign you to a job and assign you to a cell. Well, I worked in the dining room to start with for a couple of weeks, and then I quit. I told them I didn't want working in there no more. So I quit and had to go to the hole to get out of there. But when
you had to go to the hole to get out of there?
Yeah, they put me in dark hole.
So tell us about that. What was that about?
Oh, the dark hole is all metal. The walls, the ceiling, and the floor is solid sheet metal. Steel, cold as ice. And at night, they give you a mattress, but no blanket. All you got was a mattress. So you didn't have to sleep on that cold steel. Well, when I come out of there, they put me in a B side, and they put me in a cell next to Joe Carnes. And that's how me and Joe Carnes became friends. There's like a 4-inch wall between our cells and our bunk or our cell. We had like army beds, spring beds that was up against the same wall. So that put like a 4-inch section between me and him, and we could lay in bed and talk low, at night and hear each other good, and nobody else could hear us. And he told me a lot of stories. He told me all about the shootout. He told me that Coy's the one that asked him if he wanted in on it. He said War Eagle, an Indian named War Eagle, had told them that there was a tunnel in the basement that led out to the water, the ocean. And that's the way they were going to start with. But then they found out that wasn't it. So then they thought about going out through the ceiling. You had skylights in the ceiling, and they had a big, I forget what to call it, but they roll it down on 4 wheels, and you can add sections to it and make her higher and higher to get up to paint the walls in the cell house. Oh, yeah. So they thought about using that to go through the skylight. But then they figured they was going to have to shoot the guards in the tower and then go out the back over that wall and capture some of the women and children on the rock and use them as hostages to get that boat and then use the boat to escape with. But he said that that when they got all these guards locked in the 2 cells, that Kretzer was talking to the captain, and the captain was telling him that this is a foolish thing, said you need to surrender. And while they're talking, he said the siren went off. And when the siren went off, the captain told Joe Kretzer, he said, you know what that means, don't you? And Kretzer said, yeah. He said, I know what it means. And the captain said, if y'all go out on the yard, said, you're going to get hurt. And Kretzer said, no. He said, if we go out on the yard, we're going to get killed. He said, but we're not going to be the only ones that die here today. He said, and you're going to be the first. And then that moron Shockley and Thompson, they started saying, shoot them ML, shoot them ML, shoot them all. And Kretzer pulled a hammer back, shot the captain right in the chest. Mm. Then he started shooting the other guards one at a time. It said he emptied the gun. He knocked the clip out, shoved another clip in it. Said he stepped over to the next cell and apologized to Lieutenant, what was it, Sampson? I believe his name was Sampson.
I think so, yeah.
Said he apologized to him because he liked him, you know. And then he shot him anyway. And then he shot the rest of the guards in there.
So he liked him, and he kind of felt bad. Did he feel bad about that then, huh?
Yeah, he felt bad about shooting Lieutenant Sampson. O'Connor said he liked him. I guess he was a nice guy and had been good to Kretzer. But sure. He said then Kretzer told him and Coy to go in the mess hall and check on the guards in the tower. So him and Joe told me that all he had at that time was a piece of metal, like a metal bar. He said they went in the kitchen, looked out the window that's by the end of the serving line and the serving table. Said they looked out the window and seen the guards standing on the railing, and they busted they square blocks on the window. The window below it has got some square blocks that the window sits on. Well, he busted one of those square blocks completely out. He got down on his knees, stuck the rifle in that hole. And that hole is still there today. When I was there, they never replaced it.
What cell? Do you remember? I'm sorry, Charlie. Do you remember what cell? Do you remember what cell that you were in in that C block up there?
Well, Kretzer shot the guards in 103, C 102, and C 102, 103. I was in both of those cells.
Wow.
That was in the cell. I was in that cell when I got involved with the break with Teddy Green. I helped them, with their break. I wasn't going with them. All I did was gather tools for them. But the bar downstairs in the kitchen that Scott went through in 1962, you remember he got out, got in the water, and floated all the way to San Francisco. Well, they claimed for years, the prison bureau said he used a string and a scouring powder to cut that bar. Now, only a moron would believe something like that. Well, I wrote Jolene Babcock and 2 or 3 other people, and I told them that was a bunch of lies. I said Teddy Green did that in the fall of 1956. I said I gave him the saw blade that he cut it with. I said, and they got busted before they could. What they did was saw the bar, soaked it up, and blackened it up, where you couldn't see it. And they was waiting for the right time. Well, they searched our cells for some reason. I don't know if somebody read it or what. But anyway, they searched our cells and they found the bottom where they'd been cracked, the little piece pulled out, the tubes put in there, the piece put back, and then covered with soap, where it wouldn't be seen. Well, they took all that out, but it was gone. They didn't find the tubes because they'd done took them out and cut the bar and got rid of them. They got rid of the tubes, I don't even know what they did with the tubes, and I don't need to know, because if something happens, you can't be a suspect. They can't say, well, so-and-so knew. Now, one of them must have told them. See, so you don't want to know about stuff like that. Yeah. But that is how Scott got out of there. And a few years ago, they finally admitted, yes, that bar was cut by a former inmate. They finally admitted it.
Wow. That's amazing, Charlie. I want to just tell everyone we're listening to Charlie Hopkins, the last survivor of Alcatraz prison. And we are so honored to have you here. Wisdom Warrior, thank you for that kind donation. Charlie, someone wrote in and said, I flat can't believe I'm watching real life a man who had to go to Alcatraz. Wowzers. Thank you. And I think that she speaks for all of us. It's been fun to watch the chats. Wisdom Warrior, you are amazing. And we agree with you. We are living history right now.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Melissa Crone, Carwell, thank you. We feel really honored. And this wouldn't have happened without my dear longtime friend, Don DeNevi. Don, you have been in prisons and worked in prisons for as long as I've known you. Before that, you spent decades teaching and supporting and working with members of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit. That's where I met you. And tell me the difference between all of the prisons, including San Quentin, where you served for many years, and why Alcatraz is so unique.
Mike, before we go on, I just want to emphasize that Charlie mentions Joe. He's talking about Joe Carnes. Joe Carnes was the youngest inmate ever sentenced to Alcatraz. He was only about 17 or 18 when he wound up there. I don't think there was an inmate in the entire history of Alcatraz who had more respect, more admiration than the Choctaw Indian from Oklahoma, Joe Carnes. Charlie became his friend. Joe was so well respected that he literally knew everything that was going on in the prison. He was involved in the Alcatraz 46 escape again, because what Charlie was just describing to you took place the year after World War II ended. And to show you how involved the military was, Treasure Island was right across the bay from Alcatraz. And we had troops returning from the Pacific, going through Treasure Island, and then taking trains into the rest of the country, headed home. Well, Treasure Island was packed with Marines, Navy personnel. When that escape attempt took place, the call went out for the Marines to land on Alcatraz.
Wow.
They did. They had a group of men, heavily armed, and they made it to the island, climbed up on the roof, drilled holes in the roof, then lowered hand grenades down to certain levels with string, and then pulled the pins so that there was explosions all through that area. You could still see the explosion marks in the passageway between B and C. You see the concrete shattered. And it was there right up until Alcatraz prison was closed in 1963. My point is that Charlie was part of that world, which meant that he too was respected, not because he was violent and not because he was a killer, but because they knew he was a stand-up guy. They could trust him. They knew that he was real and that what he said was honest. So
yeah, and that's an interesting point, Don, because Charlie, that's kind of, I remember, speaking to you earlier last week with Mike. Share with our audience, because we've got close to 1,000 people and probably maybe 5,000 to 10,000 coming and going during this conversation. Tell everybody, share what you shared with us about what it was like to go into the hole, and how you spent 16 days there, if I remember that correctly. Correct?
Yeah. I spent. Well, I was in there a dozen times, but the one time that I was in there,
Incorrigible.
No, well, wait a minute. What number? What cell number was that?
The whole.
Yeah.
The first one was number 9.
Number
then
9.
You had 10, 11, 12, and 13.
Okay, so if people go to visit that, they're gonna remember you. So go ahead, tell us.
I was never in 13, but I think that was the strip cell where it was nothing but a hole in the floor. See, in a regular dark hole, you had a toilet and a sink that you could get drinking water out of. Well, if they put you in the strip cell with nothing, they put you in there naked. And if you went in there, the only water you got, you had to ask for. And you didn't get no mattress at night. You had to sleep on that steel floor.
Hey,
yeah,
Charlie,
so help people understand, Charlie, what that was like, and the disorientation, not knowing whether it's day or night. It really helped paint a picture for them what a hell that was to actually go in the hole.
Yeah, you don't know nothing. It's pitch black in there. There's a tiny air vent that you can talk through to your friends, upstairs. And I used to talk. I spent most of my time talking through there with Simcoe, maybe a couple of other friends of mine, but Simcoe was in there as much as I was. His real name's Roland Simcox, but they call him Simcoe. He was one of the most vicious killers out there. Me and him was the same age, 23, and he was dangerous as a rattlesnake. There ain't nobody messed with him. Everywhere he sat down, his butt would print danger.
Hey, Charlie. Clarence Carnes was in the hole for how many years?
7 years.
7 years.
He was Simcoe's best friend too.
7 years. Charlie was in there off and on. There he is on a visit. Clarence Carnes used to talk to my classes. We'd bring him out from Oklahoma.
Wow.
I would take tours of my students from Merritt College in Oakland, the Peralta Community College District. And Clarence always was anxious to talk about it. And that's probably one of the photographs that was taken. He died a short time later, and we can talk a little bit about that. And then he was highly respected by Whitey Bulger, James Whitey Bulger. Anyway, this is part of it. And Charlie, you go on and explain your feelings and affection for Clarence. I knew they were very, very strong.
Yeah, that's D block right there that Joe's in. That's D block. They bigger when they put you upstairs, you could stay permanently there. But you had no set time. Whenever the deputy warden wanted to let you out, that's when you got out. And it was a bigger cell than the cell house. You can see how wide the bars are there. That's D block there. Yeah. Joe Carnes and Simcoe and me were best friends.
Yeah,
And Joe Carnes got in a fight with a guy named Dog Man. Man was a husky guy. And Simcoe told me that Dog ain't going to get away with this. And I was with him. He walked up to Dog on the yard and started telling him what he thought about him. And Dog had on a Navy pea coat. And he started taking his pea coat off. As soon as he got it off, Simcoe snatched his knife out, caught him in the ribs under his left arm, hit him so hard it knocked him down. But Dog got back up, and as soon as he got up, Simcoe caught him again in the left jaw and cut his tongue in two, and blood started flowing out his mouth. Then he stabbed him in the stomach, and Dog managed to get away somehow, and he was running toward the lieutenant. The lieutenant was walking toward us. I was standing right by Simcoe, and when the lieutenant got to Dog, Simcoe stopped, and he threw the knife down in. He didn't give the lieutenant any problem at all. So the lieutenant, he would have bled to death if it wasn't for that Lieutenant Mahan. Lieutenant Mahan. He was a good man too. I like him. He wasn't no inmates help Dog. You know, like if you got stabbed on the yard, several inmates would pick you up and take you to the hospital. Nobody would touch Dog. The guards had to do it. They was walking with him, and Lieutenant Mahan was walking beside him, holding his neck. Simcoe cut him on the neck too, and he was holding that vein together with his fingers so he wouldn't bleed to death. He would have bled to death if he hadn't did that.
Charlie, there are two questions. One is from Sandy Lee. Thank you, Sandy, who's wondering if you're from North Carolina. I think you're from Atlanta originally, weren't you, Georgia?
No, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. I was born and raised.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Jacksonville. But when I was little, my family come from Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee. My father did. And that's where his people live, but he moved to Florida. And I remember as a little kid going back up there a couple of times. But
you were arrested in Atlanta for armed robbery. That's what got you, isn't it?
No, I was.
Why do I think Atlanta?
No, I was in prison in Atlanta twice. I transferred back to Atlanta in 1961, and that's how I got to know those mafia guys I knew.
Yeah, tell them that story, Charlie. That is really fascinating.
Yeah, I worked. Well, I was started getting in trouble again. So the deputy warden was York. When I went to Alcatraz, Mr. York was the captain. Well, he made deputy warden while I was on the rock. Well, when I come back, he knew all about me. And I started acting up a little. And he put me in a cell with a mattress and food and everything, no punishment. He put me in there for a week, and then he talked to me. And he called I told him I'd like to go to work. He put me in a 4-man cell because I was in an 8-man cell at that time. And I told him I can't hack no 8-man cell. I said, them morons, perverts, you know. And so he assigned me to a 4-man cell. There were just 4 of us in there. They had some of those for the guys that behave, you know. And when he let me out on Saturday, and as soon as I got to the cell, I was waiting on the door to open. Those guys they thought I was a rat, because usually that's what happens. If they move you suddenly like that, it's because you're a rat, you know, and it's for your safety. And I threw the stuff down on the damn concrete, you know, and told them, I said, I just got out the damn hole. And none of them wanted to talk to me. It was on a Saturday morning, and they hadn't went to the yard yet. Well, I didn't go to the yard. I laid down and started resting. They went to the yard. When they got back, they all wanted to be friends with me. And the one that was bedding right beside me, he was smiling. He said, man, he said, I just got through talking to Cox, and he told me that you was a good MF. He said that you had just got back to the Rock, and he said he said all kind of good things about you. So once they found out, you know, that I'd been on the Rock, yeah, they wanted to be friends with me. You know?
Well, I have to just comment, Charlie. We had a good parent teacher conference with Charlie before this show, folks, just to keep him from using more prison talk than any of us would want to hear. And so we express our gratitude to Charlie, because what a sense of humor he has.
He has a great sense
warrior.
of humor.
Thank you, Charlie. You got a fan from Tennessee. Darcy Ann, thank you so much. She wants to know what the most memorable conversation you had with another inmate was, Charlie. And I don't want to forget this one. Someone else earlier asked, and I apologize, I can't remember the name, but wondered about if the prison automatically handed out Bibles, or if you had to ask for something or pay for it yourself through the commissary.
No, you asked for it and they'd give you one.
So what's the most memorable conversation you had in Alcatraz?
I don't know, probably talking to Joe Carnes about that 46 escape. Yeah, he told me that when him and Coy went in the dining room, said they busted that block. It's about that wide and that high, and Coy stuck the rifle through there and shot the guard in the tire, and the guard fell down, and Coy said, hot damn, said I got him, you know. And then he got up and went in the back of the kitchen and said they shot the guard in a tower on the backside of the cell house. I mean, the dining room. And then Kretzer come in there, gave Carnes a knife, told him to go back to the cell and make sure that all those guards were dead. He said, I went in there and said, one of them was moaning. And he said, I told him not to worry, I'm not going to hurt you. He said, but you need to keep quiet. He said, if you don't, he said, they're going to kill y'all. So he said he warned them to keep quiet because all of them were still alive. Mm-hmm. He shot Baker. Baker was a good man. I like Baker. Baker was the captain's right-hand man after that from his injuries. He quit making job rotations. They made him the captain's right-hand man. And he used to sit on court with a deputy warden. And I got in a fight one time. And they hold court in A block. That's the old Army block. It's still just like it was when the Army was there. Different type of cell front, you know. And they'll put you in one of them. And then they hold court in one with the deputy warden. He has a desk there by one. And he told me, he locked me in the cell and asked me what, because he liked me, you know. We got along. And he asked me what the fight was about. And I lied, you know. I told him it wasn't nothing. I said, we was just arguing about a ball game. And he said, well, he said, you tell the deputy warden that? I said, tell the deputy that. He said, I'm sitting on court today. He said, and I'll vote for the open front cell, you know, so you won't have to go to the dark hole. So that's what I did. And they put us both in an open front cell. We didn't have to go to the dark hole. Baker was a good man. I don't know why Kretzer shot him. I guess just, you know, he was stir crazy probably. But he was a killer to start with.
Yeah. So, Charlie, there's a lot of people asking, and I want to kind of migrate and talk a little bit about Whitey Bulger, just because I want Chris to also share a little personal story. But before we leave Alcatraz,
wait, there's one question. I have one question that's killing me over here. Charlie, share the story of the inmates who were putting the pipes behind the cells and where they put the holes that eventually they were able to escape through. Remember that?
Yeah, when I left there, you had to shave with cold water. You didn't have no hot water. Well, like I've been telling you, that place changed so much, that they didn't need it no more. That's the main reason they closed it. But it had changed so much that they started putting hot water pipes in. And Fraser, an ex-Marine, that he was friends with Kawakita, the Japanese war criminal. Okay. Yeah, him and Fraser used to talk about Japan a lot, and I used to listen to him. When I sailed one sail over from Kawakita, John Decker sailed between me and Kawakita, so I got to know Kawakita pretty good. But anyway, the pipes, Fraser told me when they closed the place, some of the guys came to Springfield, like for medical treatment, and Fraser was one of them. And he told me that while they was drilling the pipes in the utility coreway to the back of your sink, in the cell, he said they drill 4 holes around that vent. And he said that's how they got the start, how they started digging it out with those 4 holes. They didn't drill them holes themselves. Nobody knows that. I've never talked about it. Well, Fraser told me, and there was a couple of other guys that come to Springfield that talked about it, but I don't think that many guys even knew, how that was done. Now, I've seen guys in documentaries. Kent was one of them. Kent went there late after the place changed a lot. And naturally, he was involved in that plot. He knew all about it. And all the guys are dead, so they can't say, no, he didn't know anything about it, And I've seen several guys in documentaries talking, and none of them has ever mentioned anything about how those holes got drilled. Yeah, because they didn't know.
And
they'll tell you they knew all about the escape. They was involved in it. Whitey Bulger told me that he knew all about it. He told me that the night that they left, he said he knew that they were leaving that night. He said, so I stayed up late. And he said, getting close to 10 o'clock, he said, I heard a bump on the roof. And he said, I knew right away that must be them. He said, so I took my bed and started banging the floor with it. He said, when I did that, he said several other guys in the cell house started doing the same thing to cover the noise. So the cell house guard, if he was suspicious of that sound on the roof, he would have called the tire guard, and the night lieutenant to check it out, because the night lieutenant walks all around the island, keeping check. In fact, one of them, the last job I had out there, I was taking care of the flowers, on the hillside, and I dug in the ground a lot, cultivating flowers and planting new flowers and stuff like that. Yes, well, sir. I dug up a machine gun shell one day that the Marines had fired in that gunfight. So I knocked all the dirt out of it, and I had a little shack there that I kept my tools in. And I went inside that, and I set it straight up and down on the table. And when I come back the next morning, it was gone. So I know the lieutenant got it as a souvenir because he never reported it. I never was called in and said, what about this machine gun shell, Never heard a word
I think Don had a question for you, Charlie.
Hey, Charlie, I never asked you this before, but were you allowed to sit or play chess on the top tier in the recreation yard?
Yeah, the inmates could sit out there and play. Yeah,
They could play there, but not the top tier. The top tier was reserved for Bumpy Johnson, was reserved for Clarence Carnes, who played chess there every day. In the recreation yard there at Alcatraz, you had these levels of tiers where the inmates sat, but the top tier was reserved for the most respected. And Carnes and Bumpy. You might say a few words about Bumpy. I'm not sure that the public knows much about him, Charlie. And he was a very good friend of yours. He had a lot of respect for you.
Oh, yeah. Bumpy was a good man. He was intelligent. He spoke fluently, perfect English, you know. I wish I could speak as good as he is or as smart as he was. His IQ was 118.
Wow.
And he was a really tough guy. Now, he didn't do a lot of fights and stuff out there, but I got some records out of his Sing Sing file, and they called him a knife fighter. They said that they said that he gave the guards a hard time in Sing Sing, and said all the inmates there respected him. And I got out of his Alcatraz file, I got one letter that the head of the Treasury Department wrote the warden on Alcatraz and warned him that he said that Bumpy Johnson is was a mediator between the Italians and the black criminals in Harlem, and said he gives the impression, said he dressed immaculately, said he gives the impression of a businessman, said he speaks with a well-modulated voice, said but he is one of the most vicious and dangerous criminals in the Harlem area. I think those were the exact words he used, and said we highly recommend he never be paroled.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
He was known as the Black Capone of Harlem.
Yeah, he was.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what they called him.
And yet really a very honorable man who never precipitated fights, who didn't go around killing people, but Charlie told me several stories about what happened in the showers with men who got smart with him. The other blacks didn't want Bumpy to associate with the whites on Alcatraz. And Charlie, I don't know how true this is, but I understand that Bumpy was allowed to play with Carnes up on that top tier. See, that top tier got most of the sun in that recreation yard. Furthermore, you could look right out the Golden Gate, through under the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, you had a tremendous vista of the entire Bay Area from that top tier. So it was a reserved area. Nobody could just walk up there. But Bumpy did. And it was Bumpy Johnson, Charlie, is this not true? It was Bumpy Johnson who let Carnes know that he received a postcard indicating that John and Clarence Anglin had made it. They had escaped from Alcatraz with Allen West. And Frank Morris. And Clint Eastwood made a movie, Escape from Alcatraz, and portrayed Frank Morris. And Frank Morris was one of the most disrespectful men ever on Alcatraz. You knew him in the reform schools in Florida.
Yeah, he was intelligent, though. He 135 IQ. He was a smart guy.
So tell us the
amazing.
truth, Charlie. Tell us the truth about that escape and the Birdman. Tell us about the.
Well, yeah, let's ask about that.
Yeah.
So Charlie, Robert Franklin Stroud, the Birdman of Alcatraz. Everyone goes wanting to see the Birdman of Alcatraz, and we told them you are going to correct the myth.
Yeah, the Birdman. He was in D Block when that shootout took place, and Joe Carnes told me this now. And when it was all over, they had threw hand grenades and everything in there and done a lot of damage. Well, while they was fixing that damage, they was putting wicker wire over the gun cage so you wouldn't be able to get in it again. And he said that they was making so much noise that the Birdman started cussing them out. And the warden finally moved him up to the hospital temporarily, until the work was completed. Then they were going to move him back. When they got ready to move him back, the Birdman told the warden that he enjoyed the peace and quiet up in the hospital, and he said, I'd prefer to stay up here. So the warden let him stay up there. So that was his choice. Now the cell that he had in the hospital, it was a utility room that's used for all kind of equipment, sheets, things like that. It's a big one, big utility room. Well, they had a sink in there for water, but no toilet. So all of those years, he had to go without a toilet. All he had was a bucket that they emptied every day. Well, in 1956, they remodeled the shower room. When I first got there, the shower room had a bunch of showers like they got today, but they also had about 6 or 8 private showers with black marble walls around it. 3 black marble walls, front was open. And you had that little bit of privacy if you used one of them. Well, in the summer of '56, they tore those out completely and made it just one big shower room the way it is today. And while they was doing that, they went up to the hospital. Now, I didn't tell you about the bug cage. They had, when I got there, they had 3 bug cages, and they were small cells with bars on the front like you would put animals in at the zoo, just like that. And there was 3 of them. Well, I was put in number 1, and Alvin Carpus told me that was the same one that Al Capone was in. Said they put him in that number 1. Well, in 1956, they tore that out, and they put a big room with tile walls, nice tile walls, tile floor, and a hole in the floor. No toilet, but a hole in the floor. Nice and clean. The other one was dirty, and cramped, small, But if you go there now, that's what you'll see. And I've never seen any of them, any prison officials ever write or talk about those 3 bug cages. And I know for a fact that they was there because I was in it. If you can find any of the old guards, that knows about that, or even ask the Bureau of Prisons, because their records would show, what they did when they remodeled and what they took out. But they'd never talk about them. Nobody knows about them.
Yeah. Now, Charlie, you can't leave this segment without answering, though, where the Birdman of Alcatraz story came from and debunk what history has taught us all. Where did he have his birds?
In Leavenworth. Yeah. when he was when he killed, he told me how he killed that guard. If you want to know, he told me that his mother was coming to see him that weekend, and he said that when he was in the dining room eating, he raised his hand for the guard to give him permission to get up. He says, I got up, walked over to him. At that time, they carried billy clubs. And he said, I asked him in a nice way. He was on reports, what it was. And if you was on report on visiting day, you couldn't have you visit. And he said, I asked him in a nice way if he would hold that report up until my mother visited me that weekend. You know, he said, after that, I don't care. I ain't worried about the hoe. And the guard cussed him and said, I thought you wanted to use the restroom. And said he'd come down with a blackjack. He raised it to hit him. He said he grabbed his wrist. He said these inmates that lied didn't even know that he was left-handed. And most people nowadays don't know it. But he grabbed the guard right arm with his right arm to keep him from hitting him. So they were bent over. He said he pulled his knife out with his left hand. He said, I come straight up. And he said, with the guard being bent over, said not to hit him straight in the heart and killed him. Well, some of the inmates that claimed they watched it and wanted to get their sentence reduced, you know, they testified that how they saw him stab him with his his right hand, you know, didn't even have him using the right hand doing it. He told me that they actually couldn't see what happened. He said, because both of us was bent over. He said the guard was a big man and said he had him pushed down, you know, as they wrestled for the billy stick. He forced Stroud down. And he said, that's when I got my knife out, come straight up with it, caught him in the heart.
Yeah, that's so sad. I wanted to just bring up, and Kristen, thank you so much for that kind donation. Wisdom Warrior, thank you so much. Charlie is absolutely amazing. We're here with Charlie Hopkins, the last survivor of Alcatraz, and Don DeNevi, one of the most brilliant authors I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. And I'm just so grateful. Chris and I talked so much this week in preparation for this. We were so thrilled. I want to just clarify one thing, Charlie, and that was the Birdman of Alcatraz never had a bird at Alcatraz. Is that correct?
No, they were all at Leavenworth.
Yeah.
The only reason they transferred him from Alcatraz to Springfield, they claim they did it for his health. They lying through their teeth. Reverend McCormick, he was 77 years old, and me and Simcoe used to go to his church services, you know, just out of respect. And they found out that he was talking to businessmen clubs about how the Birdman was treated on Alcatraz, and how he was getting old, you know, and still being treated the way he was. And the warden one day called, when he came on the island, called him to his office, told him that he wanted him to sign a letter saying that he had never took any messages out for inmates and that he wouldn't. And he took that as an insult and refused to sign it. So that they fired him for that. But that got so much publicity in Frisco for the Birdman that they transferred him to Springfield and said that they did it because of his health. And hell, when he got there, he walked the yard at a fast clip. He was 1959. You can figure his age. He was 72 when he died. Well, he got there in 59. And you know what his age would be then. And he walked the yard at a fast clip. He was in good shape because he used to walk in the hospital back and forth. He did exercise, stayed in good health. And I talked to him a week before I was released, and he seemed as healthy as I am right now. And I was released September 23rd, and November 21st, the day before President Kennedy was killed, he died, and they said he had cancer. You'd never believe he had cancer. He didn't show it. He hadn't lost weight. He looked healthy. I don't understand that. But they said he died from cancer. And when Burt Lancaster was making that movie about him, he came to Alcatraz and to Springfield and tried to visit him. And they told him no, he couldn't visit him. He said, well, I'd like to leave some money on his account. They said, no, you can't do that either. So he went back to town, and I guess he called Robert Kennedy, because at that time, Kennedy was Attorney General, and they're over the prisons. And Kennedy must have ordered the warden was a doctor there. They call him superintendent. They didn't call him warden, superintendent. But he was told to let Lancaster visit him. So he got to visit the Birdman there. And the guard's wife, the guard he killed, was still alive. And she told a newspaper that Stroud caused her to raise her children in poverty. I said, no. I said, I feel sorry for her and the children. I said, but her husband caused his own death, He was a brutal guy, and that's what some of them get. Sooner or later, they run into the wrong inmate, and that's what he did. He met up with the wrong inmate, and it cost him his life.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you, Charlie. Wisdom Warrior wrote, Don DeNevi, thank you so much for this fabulous event, and we have to echo that. I want to just put up something, Don, on the screen, and you probably weren't ready for this, but Don, how many books have you authored now?
Oh, I forgot. my tennis friends say I can't write worse. Anyway, of all of them, I think there's only one I would actually buy and read myself. And that is the biography of the Franciscan founder of the California mission system, Junipero Serra. It's my all-time favorite books. I've started writing fiction, however, and I am enthralled with dialogue and character development. And my 8th volume of Faithful Shep, the story of a hero dog and the 9 Texas Rangers who saved them, based on the true incident, El Paso, 1880. Now, Volume 8 is about to be published, and they're all on Amazon, so you have Volumes 1 through 7 already there. But Volume 8 will be out next week, we believe. Shep is now in California and headed for the gold fields in the 1890s. And with the money, with the gold that they find, because they've got a map, they're going to buy the first motion picture camera to come into Southern California, and Shep is going to launch the silent film industry. Now, that's my joy. That's what I do. That's my fun. I am so, having written for the FBI and all of that, I'm into fiction now and having a great time, Mike. I'll help you in anything you want to do. You know that.
Well, I'm pained that Who Killed King Tut isn't the one you'd buy yourself, but I guess I could accept that.
Listen, you guys wrote it. You fellas wrote it. All I did was edit the thing, and you did a fabulous job. And I was telling your son-in-law today that if you kept that up, in other words, the great crimes in the history of mankind, solving the unsolved murders, what a series that would have been. And King Tut was one of them. I think you had it. And I think today they even agree in Cairo with your assessment of how King Tut died at that early age.
I hope so. But I'll tell you what, watching the chats, Crits, hasn't this been amazing to watch the number of people that are buying Hard Time right now on Amazon, the number of people that are reading it already in anticipation of tonight with you and Charlie. This has been fantastic. But I want to just make a little transition here, Charlie, and I want Chris to tell you a story about his father's boyhood and to kind of set a stage, and then we want you to talk about Whitey Bulger and really describe who Whitey is.
There you go. That's good, Mike.
So, I mean, that my dad, as you know, Charlie, I don't know if, we talked a little bit about it, but my dad was born in South Boston, Massachusetts. And when he was 10 years old, he and Whitey actually were the same age. And they used to run numbers as kids. 1939, he was born in 28. So 1928, 1939, 38, 39. And in 1944, my dad went in the Marine Corps, and they went like this, essentially. But so my dad used to talk about him as he was a younger kid. I think he was a little bit younger than my dad. My dad, I think, was a little bit older. But anyway, that was the connection. So there you go. Tell us about
Whitey.
Yeah.
And thank you, DDS Honesty. We have someone online who has a great Whitey Bulger personal story. They're going to type it in the chat box below, and we're going to post it up and read it in a minute. So go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, Whitey was born in 1927. He told me that when he was a teenager that the cops gave him some bad beatings, and he said that they are the ones that gave him. They said they started calling him Whitey, and said that it stuck. Said that's where he got it from, the cops. And he told me that the hardest part about prison, the saddest days for him, he said in the visiting room. He said, I have to watch. He said when visiting hours is over, he said they put the visitors on one side of the room, the inmates on the other. Said the visitors leave first. And he said as the visitors are leaving, he said those little kids will be looking back crying and saying, bye, Daddy, bye, Daddy. And he said it breaks my heart. So he wasn't as evil as people think he was. He told me that when he first got out of prison, he said, I took an honest job. He said, and I couldn't live, on what I was making. He said, so I went back to what I do best. And that's how he got in. He joined one of those gangs. I forget the name of it, but he joined as an enforcer. And then he ended up as the boss of the mob. And then it started growing from there. He told me that if you operated in his territory, he had certain territory. If you operated in his territory, any kind of racket, you had to pay him. He said we called it rent money. You had to rent, to operate in his territory. And I don't know if you know who Dana White is, but he's the president of the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I saw him in an interview, and he was talking about when he was younger that he had a gambling problem, and he was from the Boston area, and he said he run up a big debt. And he said one night, Whitey Bulger and one of his bodyguards came to see him. He had an apartment at that time. And he said Whitey told him how many hours that he had to come up with the money that he owed the gamblers. And he said they left. And he said as soon as they left, said I packed my bags. And when daylight got here, he said I was on my way to the West Coast. But Whitey, see, that's why the gamblers had to pay him to operate. He would collect their money for them. He would have his men, go talk to people and tell them come up with the money or else, you know. So
yeah, he ran the Winter Hill crew, right?
Yeah, that's who he joined. Yeah, when he first got out, and then the boss of that went to prison.
Yep.
And that's how he became the top man, you know.
Yeah.
And then it grew from there. He got bigger and bigger, took over more territory. He told me about some of the gunfights he had with the other gangsters that were trying to kill him. They talk about how many people he killed. He told me that they were trying to kill him. He said after a while, he said it got to be addictive, you know. He said I got to where I enjoyed it.
Hey, Charlie, I think Don had a question there, but I wanted to just call out your good friend Dan Edwards, your publisher, actually just weighed in and just said how much he appreciates everything everyone is doing tonight. And Dan, we hope you know there are a lot of people buying your book. Thank you for trusting our dear friend Don and now our dear friend Charlie with this book. And Sergeant Leffler, thank you so much. It's great to see you. But Don, I don't know, maybe you have some thoughts there.
Well, of course, my deepest appreciation to my publisher. I never had anybody like Dan Edwards. Bartow, Pennsylvania is where he lives and has his office. And you should text Creative Text Publishing and see his other authors. I mean, they're all very, very good writers. But we have as a sequel, and we're hoping we can pull it off, are about 60 to 80 letters between Whitey Bulger and Charlie Hopkins over about 7-8 years. And you ought to read those letters. Each letter is maybe 6 to 10 pages long. And the feelings, the expressions, the emotions. Whitey comes across as a different type of person than the images portrayed in the movies and in the press. He was a killer. There was absolutely no question about that. Charlie's last letter from Whitey was what, Charlie? About a month before he was murdered in his cell?
No, it was about 10 months. They had him in isolation. He couldn't write. They probably only let him write. When I was in, the only people you could write was your, if you was in isolation, the only person you could write would be your wife, your mother, your father, somebody like that. So that's probably the last 10 months I didn't hear from him. That's probably the reason. So I'd like to say another thing about him. He told me that he tried to go straight. He said, but just like I had the same problem. When I got out, nobody wants to hire you. Nobody would give him a decent job, you know. He told me that the jobs that he could get, he said he couldn't make enough to live on. He couldn't get a decent job. He said, so I went back to what I do best.
Yeah, interesting, Charlie. So kind of unpack for our audience here how you guys actually, when the first time you met. And I think it's important for folks to remember that, in the early, 30s and through the Depression and into the mid 40s, I mean, in South Boston as a whole, I mean, I can speak from my dad's experiences. I mean, it was a really tough place to grow up. And, the kids, and my dad being one of them, was asked to, they give them a quarter or whatever it was, a nickel, to run the numbers around. And I think that's important to understand some of that foundation as people, went into, committing crimes, right? I mean, so when was the first time you ran across Whitey, Charlie?
Oh, the way I saw a story in the newspaper where he had Bird. He had Joe Carn's body. He told me all about it. He told me that he called this funeral home there in Springfield, because he was buried in the prison cemetery. And he said, I told him I'd like, if he could handle, can you handle removing a body from the prison cemetery and transfer it to the Indian reservation in Oklahoma and rebury it? And he started talking about how expensive it would be. And Whitey said, don't worry about the cost. He said, you'll get your money. He said, well, I was wondering why a businessman like you would be interested in an infamous criminal like that. He said, because he was my friend. And he said, oh, he said, you was the warden then. He said, no. He said, I was an inmate. And he said he never said another word after that. So, but I read the article in the paper about him doing that. And I wrote him, and he had just got to that prison here in Florida. So I wrote him and told him how much I appreciate what he did, that Joe Carnes was my best friend. And I sent him a copy of a letter that I got from Joe Carnes after he got out. And from there on, we became friends. We were like brothers. He talked to me about personal things. He talked to me all the time about personal problems he had. And,
you know, I have a question for both of you. Charlie, maybe first and then Don second. Charlie, talk about the relationship between the correctional officers and the inmates and the difference you saw as a young inmate then and today as far as respect and things like that in prison. And then Don, from your perspective, I mean, I've known you. You are a lover of people. You have worked in the toughest prisons in our country. Talk about finding good amongst people who commit evil. So, Charlie, you first.
Guards. In the old days, the guards was brutal. When I was on the chain gang, they treated you like a dog. If you want to know what the old chain gang's like, you can watch that Paul Mooney movie. And the
Great
modern
Escape.
prison, the modern chain gang now, like when I was in it in the early 50s, that Cool Hand Luke gives you a good look at it. That's a good movie. It shows how to walk in. It's just like when I was there. It didn't show the violence, you know, that they were still doing, but he had it down. Well, that guy was there the same year I was, but I probably never saw him, you know, because once you get there, they send you out on a different road gang. They had 68 counties, and each one had a different count, you know. So, but the guards nowadays, they can't treat you the way they used to. They don't allow it. They treat them with kid gloves now, you know. There's a couple of prisons that they have to get rough with them, but the regular prisons nowadays, no, they're not prisons. They're more like a country club.
Don, what do you think?
Mike, it goes back to what I saw in Charlie, and that is I wasn't so much interested in Charlie's mind. I was interested in his heart. And that's how I feel about officers and inmates as well. And I used to teach personality theory at the college level. And what I learned most is that if you can still love, you're not bad. You may have done some stupid things. In fact, when I was teaching 3rd and 4th grade reading lessons at San Quentin and at Soledad State Prison, Salinas Valley State Prison, because I'd rather have been in those classes teaching than working with doctoral students at San Francisco State. We always had as many as 35, 40 inmates in a classroom. And every so often there would be outside the door, and there was a glass pane window in the door. I could see who was there. There was an officer with an inmate. I knew it was a new arrival. So he would be brought in and he was going to be given to my class, to me. My first question to him was, are you stupid? Because we don't want anybody who is not stupid. I would look out over the class and I would say to all of the inmates, all right, for all of those of you who admit you were stupid for doing what you did, raise your hands. All the hands went up. Every single one. There wasn't an inmate who didn't raise his hand. So the bottom line is, God only knows where I would be if I had been caught doing some of the stupid things I did. The stupid things. And Charlie didn't start out to be an incorrigible. Look at his heart. How can somebody like that have turned into that? But look at him today. He's one of the most decent men I've ever known, and I feel that.
I don't blame anybody. I don't blame any guards or cops for what happened to me. Yeah, Alvin Karpus, he taught me not to hate cops. He said cops have a job to do. He said your family wouldn't be safe without them.
That's right.
He said they're on one side of the fence. He said, and we're on the other side.
As simple as that. Yeah.
And he was right. In the late 60s, I read a magazine story about Karpus, and it was by a woman author. She said that he became a stool pigeon on Alcatraz. So I wrote her a letter, and I told her, I said, whoever told you that, I said, if he's an inmate, I said, he's a lying, scum-sucking pig. I said, and you can tell him that I said so. I said, but it sounds more like it come from J. Edgar Hoover. And she wrote me back and apologized for what she said. And she said that Hoover was the one that gave her that information. She apologized for what she said. And within a year after that, it was on the news that he was being paroled. And somebody from the Department of Justice, I guess, said that he, or the Bureau of Prisons, one of them, whoever it was, went on the news, said that the reason he is being paroled, said he had mellowed over the years and that he had been a good influence on some of the younger tough guys. So I think that she must have sent my letter either to the J. Edgar Hoover or the parole board or somebody, but I'm glad he made parole anyway. I told her how he had changed, that he was a different person, and that if he got out, I knew that he would stay out of trouble, that he had changed over the years.
Mike, the key to working with inmates and the key with the officers is just simple respect. The inmates will respect you if they see that you're real and that you're honest and you're told. I used to tell mine all the time, listen, I'm coming right up to the line. I may even bend over it, but I will never, ever cross it. Now, you understand that because I'm on their side. And I had nothing but respect. And I got it back from the officers and I got it back from the inmates. I must have worked with 10,000 inmates. Only one scared me to death. Otherwise, I was among them and talking and everything else because I showed respect and I was not fearful. And I retired about 6 years ago, and boy, I regret every day. I really look at Charlie. Most of the guys I met were like Charlie.
Yeah. Don, don't leave us hanging. Who was the one?
Serial killer. Cold Stone.
Harvey Kerrigan?
No, this was out here in California. And anyway, see, I at the age of 15, I read a book that was entitled My Six Convicts. It was written in 1952. I was probably, 15 years old, not even that. I read My Six Convicts, which was made into a movie. The book was written by Powell Wilson. And it changed my life. It changed my attitude about inmates because it dealt with a Marine coming back from the Pacific, 1945. The only job he could get was a psychologist at San Quentin in a state prison. And he developed a relationship with all six. And it's one of the most beautiful stories ever. I said, I want to be like that guy. And so later on, I went to Dual Vocational Institute to do all my training to be a counselor. Again, no problems with inmates or officers. So it's I mean, these are men, these are human beings.
Yeah.
If they hadn't done some stupid things, which I got away with in my life, and they didn't. Anyway.
Nope. Justice is a very difficult thing because your heart goes out, and yet the demands of justice require that things happen the way they do in many cases. Wisdom Warrior just noted, Don, and thank you so much. But she wanted to say thank you for saying what you said. Looking at Charlie today is an Alcatraz success story. I'm 63. I'm impressed, even though I'm not supposed to be impressed at Charlie. But God bless you, Don. I'm blessed tonight.
It's Charlie.
Charlie, I wondered if you could just take a moment and tell people what a beautiful life you put together once you finally landed work and put together your life after prison.
Oh, it was hard finding a good job, but I did. I met a guy that owned a carpet company. His name was Jack Mayo, and he put me to work. I learned the trade, become what they call a carpet mechanic. You know, it ain't just rolling rugs out. You got to do stairs, and you do stages and churches. I did a lot of churches, carpet, the stage and the stairs in a home. You know, that's a trade. You know, it's a skill trade. Well, I learned to do that, and I made good money doing it. I bought a house, got it paid for. I had the house. I had a 30-year mortgage, and I paid it off in 13 years. I did pretty good. That was in Jacksonville. I sold that and moved to Green Cove. Got more land down here with the house. So it's a small town.
You had a beautiful family, a beautiful daughter. You're still sporting those little risque pictures on your back wall. Life has turned out pretty darn good for you, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's girlfriend there from younger. She don't look like that now, but she, that's what she used to look like.
And that picture over your shoulder of when you were boxing as a young man, and you were a pretty lethal boxer, if I remember right.
Yeah. I got into boxing when I was in the reform school.
Wow.
Would you two take a few questions from our listeners?
Sure.
We've had more than 1,000 people on at any given time tonight, and it's been so fun to watch. So if the fellas in the back room could watch for some questions and pop them up, let's do that. But Chris, I don't know, anything that's been just dogging you?
Yeah, you know, I have been absolutely humbled to be here tonight with both Don and Charlie. I mean, this has been an absolute amazing experience. And, you know, Charlie, I think one of the things that has struck my heart And it's been kind of, been with me, and I appreciate Mike giving me the chance to ask the question. I remember you shared what it was like at the early hours in the morning in the hole. And that has stuck with me the last week. And I would like people to know that side of your heart, so that when people go into that number 9, they think of your spirit, and then they reflect on who you are today and the contrast between those two circumstances. If I could ask if you would share that, and if you don't feel comfortable with that, I totally respect that as well. But it was such a poignant moment for me to learn about that part of your personality and who you are. Can you explain what you were feeling on those nights, those 16 nights, if that's okay?
Dark hole. Yeah, when I spent 16 days in the dark hole on bread and water.
Yes, sir.
I talked to my friends through the ventilator, and Simcoe tried to get me to give in to the deputy warden, and I wouldn't, I said, no, to hell with him, and some guys are like that, they ended up saying the same thing about me that they did Whitey Bulger's rap partner. Whitey Bulger's rap partner was Carl Smith. He was a prolific bank robber, and he taught Whitey how to rob banks. And they classified me and Smitty both as paranoid schizophrenics and transferred to Springfield. But Carl Smith taught Whitey how to rob banks. He was Whitey's boss when they was robbing banks. Me and Smitty become good friends. We hung out together.
And you had bread and water, and I remember you saying they gave you cold green beans and potatoes.
Yeah, they would give you like a ice cold potato, and then the next day they might give you some ice cold green beans, no taste to them, and ice cold. They put them on ice. They actually put them in the freezer. It wasn't just refrigerator. They put them in a freezer where they were ice cold. So, you couldn't enjoy eating them, and no taste to them, no flavor, no salt, nothing like that. So I didn't even eat that, I eat the bread, but.
Hey, Charlie, do you remember anything that Joe had to say about the 7 years he was in solitary?
Oh, he told me that he sailed by the Birdman. The day that he was sentenced to life, he said 2 guards and the deputy warden took him straight into D block, up to the 3rd tier, put him in a cell right beside the Birdman, and said the deputy warden told him, said, well, here you are, and here you'll stay until the day you die. And he said him and the Birdman got to be friends because, they cell right beside each other. And said for 7 years, all he did, talk to the Birdman, walk back and forth, exercise, do push-ups, read, get library books and read. That's all he had to do for 7 years.
Amazing. Don, Darcy Ann wants to know what your favorite book was to write thus far in your career.
Oh, it's Juniper Sarah. It's without question. But it's a scholarly book, and it's a story of really the founding of California, the establishment of the pueblos but especially the mission system and the Catholic Church. So that, without question. I mean, I don't go to Mass anymore, but let me tell you, when I pass Carmel Mission, I stop and I go in, because Sarah is buried in the floor before the altar. So that goes without question. But I'm sure enjoying my fiction now and talking about solitary confinement. One of the novels that I wrote is entitled Shelter Cove, and it deals with a true incident. And I have an escape from death row at San Quentin. And it's a big bloody shootout and all of that. But at Shelter Cove, if you don't know where Shelter Cove is, pull it up. Shelter Cove, California. It's one of the least known and one of the most beautiful spots on the Pacific West Coast. There's only one road in, one road out. And on a clear day from the beaches, black volcanic sand beaches, you can see all the way to China. And very few people know about it. But anyway, volume 2, because it deals with the coach at San Quentin. And I was a coach. I was teaching 3rd, 4th grade reading, but they asked me to be the coach for 6,000 inmates. I told them they must be crazy. What do I know about basketball? Not interested. Football, yeah. Baseball, yeah. But tennis, of course. Well, they allowed me to leave the prison each day for an hour and a half to go play tennis at the Marin Tennis Club. If I worked weekends, bringing in outside teams to play the inmates, which I did 14 years. But I got to leave every morning at 7. I got there at 5:30, but I got to leave at 7 to play tennis and get back there. Out of 24,000 inmates, I think staff members, I was the only one who was allowed that. But my second volume, the sequel to Shelter Cove, is going to be entitled When Tennis Played San Quentin, where 5 inmates, angry after a year in the hole, are released that day, and they want to kill an officer. And the coach sees their hatred. And he's on the tennis court, and he walks over to these 5 guys, and he says to them, I see the hate that you have, and I know what you're going to do. Now, I want you to grip this tennis racket handle. You're so used to handling the grips of guns. Take this and see if you can duplicate what those guys out there on the court are doing, running and hitting a ball 90 feet and putting it within inches where they want that ball to go. Let me see you match that. You call yourselves men and all of that. My story will have them go all the way to the U.S. Open, where they'll lose in the finals, but they come back to San Quentin, and there'll be 6,000 inmates waiting in the recreation yard for them. So that's what I do. And I write because these are stories I love that I create. These are my people. The Shep series, it's like every single one of them is family. And Shep himself, to say nothing of that magnificent dog. And based on a true incident, too, where he was left 100 yards in Mescalero Apache country with Apaches all around, and 9 Texas Rangers, 9, said, let's go get that dog. He must be hungry. 5 days to get there.
We need one.
I mean, and what I couldn't believe it. Who would do such? What kind of men were those?
It's crazy.
You would do it for yours. I would do it for mine, of course. But anyway, so my answer is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Unbelievable.
Chris, I'm going to give you a minute to just wrap up, and then I want Charlie to share what the biggest lesson he learned during incarceration was.
I just tonight's been just a fascinating evening. I think with so many contrasts here. I mean, we've learned about respect. We've learned about honor among not only cops, but, inmates, and how critical that is when we realize, the importance of that in today's society. This is much more powerful. This here is much more powerful than this. I think Don is a testament to that, and his life's work has been a testament to that. And I'm honored to, be part of this panel this evening as well. And then, of course, Charlie. I mean, Charlie, I could sit with you for next 10, 15 years and not get enough, because every moment you're speaking, I am, soaking it up. And I know that our viewers, and we call this the PE family. What's most impressive about you is the fact that you said, I make no excuses for what I did. But today, you have no reason to ever make an excuse for what you're doing, because you're leaving a legacy. I think this YouTube and the internet is going to leave your legacy much different than the legacy you left when you walked out of those prison walls. Right. And, God bless you for that, my friend. I hope you've had fun here, because you've got a lot of fans. I'm reading these chat comments over here, and my goodness, I think we're 2 years younger, you'd probably have 55 girlfriends lining up for you here, my friend. So, but it's been a lot of fun, Mike. A lot of fun.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure for me.
So, Charlie, what was the biggest lesson you learned from your time at Alcatraz?
Well, the biggest lesson is don't get caught. But they did me a lot. The best thing that happened to me was they sent me to Springfield, because they did me a lot of good there. I got to give them credit. They done me a lot of good. I had problems that they helped me. The medicine that they put me on, it changed some of the ways about me, but I'm still the same person. But some people, Simcoe was, Carpus was, and Whitey Franklin was. A lot of us got a certain kink in the brain, and it's like a short circuit, And that medicine, whatever, it done us some good somehow, because it changed a lot of my ways. I don't have any desire to steal. I don't even have any desire to steal anymore. Hell, I used to take what I wanted. I said, to hell with them greedy capitalist pigs. I grew up hating capitalism because I saw all the suffering around me that was going on because of the greedy people, Take food and they're throwing it away now. Instead of letting poor, hungry people, starving people have it, they poured kerosene on it. They'd take it to the dump and set the dump on fire. They used to set the dumps on fire back then. They don't do that no more. But they had to burn the stuff, pour kerosene on it. You see what the government's doing for poor people nowadays, and people that don't deserve any help. The government's doing all kinds of stuff for them. Back then, they done zero for you. You did it yourself, or you weren't hungry. There wasn't no help. Whitey Bulger told me the hard times that him and his family had growing up. Well, he told me some of the same things about how his family was poor like that as I was, because they grew up during the Great Depression. So he told me when he was a teenager that Dillinger was his hero. I said, well, hell, Dillinger was my hero too. I said, I grew up with Dillinger as a hero, so we had that in common right off the bat,
Well, we cannot thank you both enough. As you can tell, I started coughing a little bit there, but May God bless you both. Thank you so much for taking time out tonight to help what we call the Profiling Evil family, which is growing measurably every single day, and it's because of people like you. I hope you'll come back again, and we'll have a chance to talk more. And I know that people will be asking for you to come back, so keep taking your vitamins, Charlie. Don, keep smacking that racket.
You got it.
And Chris, thank you for everything you do for us. Until we see you all again, which will be Monday night for choir practice. And Chris, we got a big night. We're going to be talking about, we're going to be recapping and bringing back up to the surface a timeline. We've been working in concert with Web Sleuths and Analytics to come in and talk about the Daybell case and that series of madness that surrounds that case. We're going to kind of refresh that and bring it up to date. So we'll see you all Monday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And thanks so much.
Hit the subscribe button, everybody. Thank you so much.
Charlie, I'll call you, okay?
Yeah, okay, Don.
Thank you, guys.
You got it.
Thank you.